Good afternoon, everyone. I am pleased and excited to open today's conversation and introduce our featured participants. My name is Janet Bermudez-Lovo, and I am a political science major in the Pre-Law Institute. Judge Raymond Fernandez is a proud John Jay College bloodhound. He set his sights on becoming a lawyer early on. Growing up with absent parents and facing homelessness, he recognized education as his pathway to a better future. Today, at just 39 years old, Judge Fernandez serves as Justice of the Bronx Supreme Court. In his role, he presides over cases involving malpractice, wrongful death, personal injury, and mental health commitments. As a native of East Harlem, Judge Fernandez attended New York City public schools before earning his bachelor's degree from John Jay College and his Juris Doctor from CUNY Law School. I'm truly excited to hear more about his journey and the impactful work he's doing on the bench and in the community, and I know the audience will have some great questions for him later on. Today's conversation will be facilitated by our college president, Karol V. Mason. Before joining John Jay, Mason served as United States Assistant Attorney General and head of the Department of Justice's Office of Justice Programs. She oversaw an array of criminal justice initiatives advancing community and police trust and reentry. President Mason received her law degree from the University of Michigan Law School and her bachelor's from the University of North Carolina. I thank the Office of External Affairs for arranging today's program and presenting me with this opportunity. Please join me in welcoming Judge Raymond Fernandez back to his alma mater.
Yeah. Let's see. This work? Yes, it does work. Hi. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for that warm welcome and introduction. Thank you to President Mason for having me, for sitting down and doing this with me. You got a little bit there. I don't really know what my opening remarks should be. You heard a little bit of it. I am a Puerto Rican kid from Spanish Harlem. That's who I am. I grew up with parents who were in the thralls of drug addiction. It was very, very difficult. We were in a tiny little 2-bedroom apartment. As was stated, they were absent a lot of the times. They were physically present, but absent in every other sense of that. And I sort of had to make a decision at a very young age of what I was going to do, whether I was going to be stuck in that or whether I was going to move out of that. And as I've said before, and I like to say, it's like my go-to line, I realized very young that education could be a ladder out of poverty. And so I just started blindly climbing that ladder and not looking down. And I've been very, very grateful and fortunate that it has taken me very, very, very far. And so I think I'll just defer to you to ask some questions.
Well, we are excited to have you, and he didn't mention something. He just received last week our Distinguished Alumni Award from John Jay. Let's give him a big round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you.
And as you will hear from this conversation, it is truly earned. You are so distinguished, and we're so happy to have you. And we were talking earlier before this started, and he was talking as if he's old. But he's not that far removed from you all. What year did you graduate from John Jay?
I graduated John Jay 2008.
And that's less than 20 years ago.
Is it? Yeah.
That's
And for the record, I turned 40 next week. So I'm.
Oh my! He's so old.
So,
he was saying, he was like, back when I came out, and I was like, okay, time out. We've got to stop, because I've been out for over 40, almost 45 years, so you're still young.
I like to tell all the students, this building wasn't here when I came to school here. So like that's back in my day, I had classes in North Hall. I've already hit a bunch of students with that one.
So how many of you will agree with me that he's not really that old? Okay, it's only the older. Wait, it's only the older people whose hands are going up. A couple of young people. Yeah. We got the chief of staff for the president of the student body raising her hand, so you got a little bit.
Trust me, you grow up and you will regret who you called old for
being
in their late 30s.
Right. So in your young trajectory, why don't you help our folks understand what your pathway was to John Jay, how you found John Jay?
So I was navigating New York City's school system. I went to high school in Spanish Harlem. It wasn't the best school. We were plagued by violence constantly. We had lack of resources and all these things. And so I kind of set my sights and said, well, if I go to college, that has to be different, right? There's no one to tell me it was different. But I set my sights and I said, I bet college has to be different, right? Like people pay to be there, don't they? So they're not going to be acting a fool like what's going on here, right? I can actually go show up in class and pay attention and there won't be any disruptions. So I said, all right, I want to go to school. And I was very fortunate to know what I wanted to do when I was young, when I was very young. So I had set my sights on being a lawyer right around junior high school. So I was probably about 8th grade, going into 9th grade. So I entered high school knowing what I wanted to do. And so I just sort of, with high school, because it was as turbulent as it was, I was just like head down, go to class, get through class day by day, week by week, semester by semester. And if I remember telling myself, if I just make it out of here, then I'm home free. I'm home free. And so, I had looked into all the CUNY schools, largely because of affordability. And so back in my day, back in my day, the application was a global application that allowed you to apply to multiple schools. And John Jay was my first choice because I said, yeah, criminal justice. That's the aim. That's the goal. I want to go to law school. And this seems the well suited. And I was very, very fortunate. My best friend at the time was a year ahead of me. And he had applied to CUNY schools, and he had gotten into John Jay, and he had started John Jay. And I remember I came with him when he got like his student ID. And this was back, I don't know what y'all have now, but back in the day, you used to have to go, the register was in one floor, the bursar was in another floor. So I remember I went with him as he got his ID, and I was like, this is really cool. And it was exactly what I thought it would be. Everybody was very serious. Everybody was very focused. Everybody was there with a purpose. They weren't just there because, a truant officer would pick you up if you weren't there. So that was my story of John Jay. And then I got here, and it was more than I could have imagined.
So how did you know at 12 years old that you wanted to be a lawyer? Tell us about why that was so important to you.
So, when I was a kid, again, because I was dealing with drug addicted parents, when I was a kid, there was always something popping up. There was always an eviction notice posted to the door because they weren't paying their portion of the Section 8 subsidy. My mother in particular was always getting picked up, whether she was jumping the turnstile to take the train somewhere or whether she was caught with something in her pockets that she wasn't supposed to have. And it had really impressed upon me when I was young that it was a legal aid lawyer that would always save the day. We never got thrown out because someone spoke up for us. My mother came home to me. She never really was never really away for too long of a period. And that was a legal aid lawyer. And I remember her telling me, the legal aid lawyer at the arraignment said, I have to go home because I have a little boy at home. And I was like, wow, and so then I romanticized the notion. I was like, yeah, I want to be a lawyer. This is what I want to do, right? I want to speak for people who can't speak for themselves. I want to speak for families that can't speak for themselves. And so I made that my trajectory.
So Elizabeth, I'm going to come to you after this question. So you morphed from wanting to be a lawyer, a very good lawyer, a legal aid lawyer, to what made you make the transition to say, I don't want to be just a lawyer, now I want to be a judge? How did that come to be?
Oh, that's a great story. So we fast forward. I was successful through John Jay. I graduated in 2008. I studied for the LSAT. That was a bumpy ride. We can probably touch on that.
For those of you who don't know, that's the law school admissions test.
Yes, and we can talk about that ad nauseum because you should confront the things that scare you. So I was very fortunate to make my way through that LSAT, to survive that LSAT is what I tell people. And then I gained admission to CUNY Law. And at CUNY Law, I had a professor, and her name was Jenny Rivera. Okay. And she was my mentor. She was she taught me civil procedure. I'm trying to think. She taught my lawyering seminar. Your first year of law school at CUNY, you have a lawyering seminar. She was my seminar instructor. And she was intense. She was really, she's an intense individual. And she took a liking to me, and I was very fortunate for that. And so, again, we're fast forwarding the story. So we fast forward 3 years of law school. I'm very fortunate to graduate law school. I was very fortunate to pass the bar. I had made it my intention during law school to be that legal aid lawyer that I was talking about. Right, that was my promise, that I would give back, that I would be the legal aid lawyer that I needed when I was a kid, that my family needed. And so I was very fortunate. I was hired at legal aid. So legal aid took me, and I started training down on Water Street by the South Street Seaport. And then I was sent to Queens, and I was a public defender. And I did that for about 18 months before an article in what we call the New York Law Journal. It's a publication for lawyers. An article hit my desk and I looked, and Jenny Rivera was on the cover. And she had made what's called the short list. They were looking for the governor was going to appoint someone to the Court of Appeals, which is the state's highest court. There are only 7 judges. There was a vacancy. And they came out with a short list. These are the names in contention, and these are the names that will be submitted to the governor. And she was on there. And I was like, wow, that's actually incredible, because she had an entire career in academics. I didn't really think of her as a judge, which don't make that mistake, because anybody can be a judge. Okay, anybody can. And so I didn't think anything of it. I went back to my clients. I went back to arraignments. I went back to my busy little life, and whatever I was doing, I was, in the struggle. And I think maybe about a month later or a month and a half later, it makes the news that the governor had selected her. It was Andrew Cuomo at the time, and he had selected her and he appointed her to the Court of Appeals, and she was going to go through a confirmation process. And sure enough, it was very contentious too. She went through a very contentious confirmation process, but she made it on. And I remember sending her an email just saying, congratulations, right? Just, wow, that's really incredible, the state's highest court. And she wrote back and said, thank you. And would you consider applying to be a law clerk? And I was like, yeah, I would actually consider applying to be a law clerk. And so that's, so I'm getting there. I'm going to land the plane. And so
No, I'm very enthralled. And
so now here I am. I was this kid who was really, really, it was kind of a moonshot that I could even go to college, and then it was really a stretch to think that I could be a lawyer. And now I graduated, I passed the bar, I'm a lawyer, I'm in court, and now I just got asked if I wanted to apply to clerk on the Court of Appeals, and so I was there probably a day later. And so I went and I met her a day later, and I remember her saying, why do you want to do this now? Don't you want to go try cases with legal aid? You could defer, right? Why don't you try case? And I said, oh, no, I want to do this right now, right? This is the timing. This feels right. This is what I want to do. And so she hired me. And so now I'm a Court of Appeals law clerk. And I was only like maybe the second kid from CUNY schools to do it. All the other kids were all Ivy League lawyers. But to answer,
for those of you, this is like a Supreme Court clerkship.
yeah, this is our state's highest court. This is our state's highest court. So to answer your question, what made me think I wanted to be a judge? Judge Rivera, I remember the first time, this was my professor, right? We look at people through different lenses. This is her role. She was my mentor. She was my professor. When you graduate law school, you get hooded. You get your hood. She hooded me at my graduation. So, and then I remember she came out of her room and she was wearing a robe. And I was like, whoa, like, this is like, whoa, she's wearing a robe. And so, I swear, and it's silly, and I still tell the story no matter how silly it sounds. When she passed by, the way that robe moved, I thought it was like a superhero cape. Mm-hmm. Like, you couldn't tell me otherwise. It was the coolest thing in the world. And I was like, wow, that is incredible. And then I got to really work with her, like early mornings, late nights on very, very complex matters. And I got to see her work ethic, and I got to see what she brought to the table and how important her role was as a jurist. And that was it. And I was like, I want to be a judge.
Good for you. So Elizabeth, why don't you stand up and ask your question? Introduce yourself first. Oh, you know what? Come here, take this mic and I'll get the other one. I got it, Alexa.
Good afternoon. As a Ecuadorian American, I'm that's also interested in involving myself in the legal field. I'm very curious to know, how does your Hispanic identity influence your approach to the pursuit of justice?
So it's nice to meet you. Thank you for that. Again, I'm a Puerto Rican boy from East Harlem, right? I will say that in everything that I do in the courtroom, I'm guided by neutrality, right? I'm completely impartial. I don't care where you're from. I don't care who you voted for. I don't care what you look like. If you come to my courtroom, you get treated fair. And I pride myself on that. But how does being Hispanic form my identity? Some of the hardest working people I have ever met are Hispanic. And I don't just mean Puerto Rican. Puerto Ricans, Dominicans, Mexicans, Ecuadorians, across the board in multiple jobs that I've had, the hardest working people in the rooms that I've been in have been Hispanic. And so I pride myself on that. That's part of me too. And so I really strive to live up to that work ethic. I'm guided by it.
And so, Fiona, your question is a natural follow-up to that one. Can you pass the mic across the aisle to Fiona? Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Fiona Valdez. I'm an Adelante ambassador. And I have a couple of questions. I'm actually curious to know what high school you attended because I also went to high school in Harlem. I'm not sure if it's Spanish Harlem. I went to Manhattan Center for Science and Math.
Where is it? I'll tell you, the boundaries have shifted.
Oh, it's 116th Street and Pleasant Avenue.
That's Spanish Harlem.
Okay.
That's on the east side, right?
Yeah,
Over by Rayos. Over
near the water. Like you could
The
see
water?
it across the bridge.
Okay.
So yeah, I am curious as to know like what high school you attended and like if you have any like recent information about it because I know that like a lot of schools have like had positive improvements over the years.
So I'll answer that question. I went to Central Park East Secondary School. It was on 106th and Madison Avenue. I believe it still exists. I'm not quite sure. I do make a point every time I drive by it to tell my kids, Daddy went to high school right there. Daddy went to high school right there. Does it still exist as Central Park East? I'm not sure. But I know the building is still standing. It was Jackie Robinson Educational Complex. The building is still standing. I've driven by it several times. But that's it.
And
Can't
then
say- I hope that it is improved.
and my second question is as a New York native, how does your experience growing up in New York City and attending public schools affect your perspective when you make decisions on the bench?
So I don't know so much that it affects perspective, but it affects my approach, certainly, right? So, I think the number one thing when I look, nowhere in the world is like New York City, right? Nowhere in the world is like the Bronx. The biggest thing for me lately has been language access, right? So, you have to be patient, right? When speaking to people through an interpreter, you have to make sure the interpreter is present. You have to make sure people feel seen and heard. And I have a lot of tolerance for that. And I think that has to do with being a New Yorker. I had a calendar's just a bunch of cases on the docket. I had a calendar recently. And I had 3 litigants. One needed a Mandarin interpreter. One needed a Spanish interpreter. And the other one needed an Albanian interpreter, all in one calendar. And you know what? We made sure they got it. And even sometimes litigants come and Spanish interpreters requested, okay, we have to wait for the Spanish interpreter. No, I can understand. No, it's okay. I promise you it's okay. I want you to understand what I'm saying, and I don't want you to struggle to understand. I don't want you to misunderstand. And I want to hear what you have to say. So let's just wait for an interpreter. So being patient and tolerant is what I've gained from being a native New Yorker.
So I'm not sure that everyone here understands what a day is like for you and what kind of cases you hear. So why don't you give us a little example of what a day, because I'm not using the word typical because I know every day is different.
Yeah.
But give us an example of what a day looks like with your calendar and what kind of cases you're hearing.
Sure. So I sit in Bronx Supreme Civil Term. So I hear civil cases. I hear a lot of personal injury cases. Slip and fall, trip and fall, you're involved in an automobile accident, you're a construction worker, you fall down on a job site, labor law, stuff like that. Predominantly motor vehicle cases. I preside over about 1,400 cases. I think 1,000 of them are motor vehicle accidents, something rear end collision, T-bone, something like that. The type of cases that you see commercials on TV for. If you're injured, those commercials, stuff like that. So a typical day. The way my week is structured is Monday is called calendar day. So on Monday, I have a series of conferences on numerous cases. So on Monday, I will hear cases that are in the discovery phase, right? So I'll do discovery compliance. So I'll have 25 compliance conferences. So those people are going through discovery and they need an order for further discovery and things like that. So I'll conference those cases. Cases that are outside of discovery and they're certified that they're ready for trial.
So I'm going to back up 1 second and explain what discovery is to the audience here.
Oh, so discovery is the beginning of a case, okay? That's where both parties exchange information. right? Discovery can be paper discovery, as in, if I'm suing because you breached a contract, you got to give me a copy of the contract, right? That kind of discovery. If you've slipped and fell and someone has photographs of what you tripped and fell on, you have to exchange that in the discovery process. That's where you also get to take depositions, right? So if you sue someone, the defendant that you're suing gets to take your deposition, where you, under oath, explain what happened. They get to ask you a bunch of questions. So that's the discovery phase. That's in the beginning of a case. So when you get out of discovery, now you're saying that you're ready for trial. Once you're ready for trial, now you have to have pretrial conferences. So I'll have 25 compliance conferences. Now I'll have 25 pretrial conferences. That has a different posture. Pretrial will be, okay, what happened? Who's involved? Is there, have there been any motions on this case? What do I need to do to get this case out to trial? And so I'll have between, 35, 40 of those, right? So we're very busy. My courtroom is just about as big as this. So there's as many rows as this. It'll be full. People will come up, and everything is just, how do I move your case forward? Whatever it is, what are you here for? Compliance? So what's still outstanding? What discovery do you still need, and what do you need from me to get that? Oh, you're on for pretrial? What do you need from me to be ready to go pick a jury? How do we do that? And then I'll have other things peppered in. When someone's under the age of 18, we call them an infant. Doesn't matter. You could be 17 and a half. We call you an infant.
Okay, so when I call you all kids, you don't have to get
Yeah,
insulted. I'm not
you don't have to
calling
be
you an
offended.
infant, at least.
Right. So for infant plaintiffs, you can't settle a case for an infant without judicial approval. So I'll have something called, or what we call compromising the case, ending the case. You can't do it without judicial approval. So I'll have something called an infant compromise hearing. That's where the child actually comes before me and they show me what the compromise is and I approve it or not. That's my favorite thing to do, because then kids come to my courtroom. That's my absolute favorite thing to do. They come in. What do you want to be when you grow up? Please say a lawyer. They say a lawyer. I let them sit on the bench. They take a picture. It's the sweetest thing. It's my favorite thing to do. So I'll have infant compromise hearings. I'll hear oral argument on a motion, something like that. People will, what's this on for? We're here to argue a motion. Okay, who's the movement? Who filed? Tell me, what am I looking at? What are you asking the court to do? Okay, what's the opposition? Stuff like that. So I keep very busy on Mondays, and every other day is reserved for me being on trial.
Okay. Well, Sayuri has a question. I think there's a natural follow-up to that.
Hi, nice to meet you. My name is Sayuri Casas Perez. I'm part of the Adelante community. And my question for you today is, what is the most challenging aspect of your position?
The most challenging. Decision making in general is very difficult. I'm recycling speeches. The average person makes 200 decisions a day, right? Well, someone looked into this and said, well, then a judge makes double that. So I'm required to make 450 decisions a day, whether it be which way do I drive to work, what am I going to eat, and then all these serious decisions about people's lives. Every single thing I sign my name to affects someone's life. And I have to go home at night, put my head on the pillow, and know that I did right by them. So that's the hardest part. But you can't be indecisive either, because they're coming to you for resolution. They want an outcome. You can't just sit on it. Oh man, that's tough. I wish there was an adult here I could ask. So that's the hardest part, is you make a decision, you abide by the decision, you stick to it, and you got to move on. I can't dwell. So every now and then I'm afforded the opportunity, if I get something wrong, particularly when I'm on trial. If someone says objection and I say sustained, right, or overruled, I go home. I'm sitting down, I'm eating. My wife is talking to me. I don't hear a thing she says because I'm thinking about that objection. And then I go, yeah, that wasn't right. I should have allowed that question. Stuff like that. Then the next day I can go to the lawyers. I was wrong to do that. How can I fix it? Can we fix it? And so, you can work forward. Some decisions you are amendable. But by and large, being decisive is the hardest thing.
I love how you just said that it's possible to make a mistake and admit it.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about, because I think that's important for people to understand, is that you have this power and you have this important position, and yet you can say to folks, I made a mistake. Flesh that out a little bit for the students here.
Yeah, you can get everywhere by being humble. You really can. You really can. No one's infallible. They're not. And the few times that I have had this situation, or maybe 2, 3 times, when I've gone to the lawyers, with my tail between my legs, like, all right, I got that wrong. I mean, they were floored, right? I guess judges don't say they're sorry too often to them. They were floored by this. And the reaction has just been so positive. Actually, Judge, you know what? It was completely harmless. Don't worry about it. But thank you. And so now I have that rapport because the same lawyers keep appearing in front of me. And the same lawyers, if you get assigned to me for trial, you come into my courtroom, you look at me, you see my name, you start texting your friends. Who's Fernandez? Who's Fernandez? I never tried a case with Fernandez. Who is he? And that means something to me, what they say, right? Your reputation precedes you, and your reputation is very, very important. And part of that is humility.
So I know a lot about his story, so I'm going to guide him with some of these questions to get him to some things you're very concise. And there's some things I was like, keep going because I know the rest of it and I want them to hear it. So mentors are important to you and they've been a big force in your life. And we talked earlier about this pathway to you becoming the youngest judge in New York State. Talk to the audience about how you've given us a little bit of information about why you wanted to be a judge, but how people reacted to that and how you went about making that a reality.
Sure. So you're inviting these long-winded questions.
They need the story.
They do need the story. So, I had decided when I was clerking on the Court of Appeals that I wanted to be a judge. That was what I was going to do. And so I had looked into it, and the New York State Constitution says you can't be a judge unless you have 10 years of practice. Okay, you have to be an admitted attorney for 10 years. So I looked at that and I set a timer. I set a timer.
He's not joking.
I'm not joking. I set a timer. I said, all right, 10 years. Okay, I could do that. So what can I do in these 10 years to make me a good judge? What does that look like? How do I build this resume? And so I had talked to Judge Rivera about it because my clerkship was only for 2 years. And so I was leaving Judge Rivera and I was just trying to figure, I said, well, I'd like to stay in the court system. That kind of seems like the right thing to do if I want to be a judge, stay in the court system. Unfortunately, the jobs weren't there. So I was like, all right, what am I going to do? So I talked to Judge Rivera and she says, I want you to speak to a friend of mine. I'll get you his name and you can go sit down with him. He is the administrative judge, which means he's the boss. He's the boss of Criminal Supreme in Queens, where I used to work. I said, okay. So she gets me that name, and the name is Joseph Zayas.
And how many of you all were here where Judge Zayas was sitting in this chair and we had a conversation with him? Some of your hands ought to go up. And I want you to hear these connections.
Yeah.
So you've seen Judge Zayas here talking to you all. And now he's going to tell you how Judge Zayas influenced his life.
Yeah. So Joe is Judge Zayas, Justice Zayas. Chief Administrative Judge Joseph Zayas. So I reached out and I said, hey, I'd love to talk. And he wrote back immediately. This was via email. And he wrote back immediately and said, yeah, why don't you come out to Queens and we'll go have lunch together. I said, okay. So from, I was clerking, I was in Midtown. And so I trekked all the way out to Queens and I went and, he was the nicest guy. He said, all right, we're going to go. He goes, you like Thai food? And I was like, I guess. Like, all right. And so he's like, I'll take you for Thai food. And so he introduced me to everybody, introduced me to his staff, introduced me to everybody going down the hallway. And so we go for Thai food and we're sitting there and he says, so what do you want to do? And I said, I really want to be a judge. And I had said that out loud before. And people looked at me like I was crazy. You say you want to be, I said I wanted to be a judge. You would think I said I wanted to be an astronaut. Oh, that's nice. That's nice. Yeah. Okay. Well, what do you got to do? Okay. Good luck with that. But when I said it to Joe, he looked at me and his eyes lit up and he goes, okay. And that was the first time somebody, besides, even Judge Rivera, even she was like, all right, well, okay. Yeah, it's ambitious, but it's doable. It's ambitious. But the way in which Joe treated my dream with such certainty, that meant everything to me. He says, okay, you could do it. It's not going to be easy, but you could do it. It's been done. And so he walked me through his trajectory. He was a legal aid lawyer. The parallels there were crazy, right? He was a legal aid lawyer. And then he clerked for a judge. And then he wanted to become a judge. And so he told me, his path to a judgeship, as I recall, is he was appointed by Mayor Bloomberg to the criminal court. And so he told me what it was like to meet the mayor and he walked me through what that looked like and all these other things. And what was important, and this is really speaks to this idea of mentorship. I don't know that he was sitting there trying to mentor me, but he was indulging in a conversation. He was having a candid. He gave me his time, right? You know, did I go around saying I just picked up a mentor? I'm gonna have a meeting with my mentor next week, and me and my mentor are gonna stay in touch. No, but it was this organic process. He just sat down and he spoke to me, and he didn't make me feel like I was crazy for what I wanted to do, for how ambitious I was. And so he told me, well, if you want to be a judge, principal law clerks become judges. I didn't even know what the hell that was, but I was like, all right, I'll be a principal law clerk. It sounds like somebody who works in a school. It's like, all right, like a librarian, the principal. Like, okay. And he was just great. And I remember he paid for lunch, and I'll never forget this. He pays for lunch, and I said, no, I got it. And he goes, no. He pays for lunch. And he says, when you become a judge, you could buy me lunch. So, and he still won't let me buy him a meal, but it's okay. That's okay.
And so and I'm going to make him tell a little bit more on this story too, but I want you to hear, again, I love this phrasing about you didn't run around saying he's your mentor. He indulged you with his time and conversation. And Judge Zayas is amazing. I wanted him to be a speaker for our MBK convocation, and he had he had 2 other speeches that night. And he was still going to try to figure out how to make us the 3rd. He said, I can't do it, but I'll find you somebody. And he doesn't just give me a name. When he called me back and he said, here's going to be your speaker, he's already knows what it's required. He's already a yes. That's amazing. Somebody who gives you that kind of time. And what it does is people pay it forward, because look who's sitting here with us, because somebody sat with him. And that's what we'll expect of you all, because you're going to be sitting here as our distinguished alumni one day, doing this same thing and paying it forward. So I'm just giving you a little break, because you're going to have to tell more of the story. I'm pulling teeth. There's some things they need to hear that I want them to hear. And so you decided you wanted to be a judge. It had to be 10 years. Tell them how precisely you got that 10 years and how you did that.
So I applied before I was even eligible. I applied in January of 2023. I was sworn in on law day, May 1st, 2013. I was appointed, I interviewed May 24th. So 24 days after I was eligible, they interviewed me.
Be a little more precise? No. I'm joking.
Yeah, 24 days. And then the very following week, the governor's office called me. The very following week. So I was appointed to the Court of Claims on I became a judge June 9th, 2023, which was 10 years and or something like that.
Yeah. And it shows that, having a vision, having a plan, not letting other people dictate what your plan should be, and not taking your dreams from you. You were persistent with it and stayed with it. And that's what you all do with your dreams. Hang on to them. Don't let other people dissuade you from them. Keep doing it. I'm just looking. Wait, I need to give other people time for questions. Wait, don't I? Where's Mindy? I'm looking for my instructions. Should I be opening it up for questions? Okay, yeah, because I got plenty more, but I realized this isn't about just me. So I'm sorry, I was getting excited talking. Do other people have questions? Yes, ma'am. Come on.
Hold on.
They've got a mic for you over here. Our chief of staff for the student body president. Wait, somebody bringing you a mic? Oh, okay. It's coming that way. Thank you, Mindy. Introduce yourself.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
My name is Radita. I am the chief of staff to our student council president. So my question, I also intern with Judge Grace, which is in the Queen's Supreme Court. She's the administrative judge. So in the recent years, we have seen like a rise of pro se litigants. So in a case like that, how do you ensure fairness when you have like an opposing counsel who has like a trained lawyer, and then on the one side you have like a pro se litigant? So in a case like that, how do you normally ensure that you're being fair, but also you're ensuring that the pro se litigant is getting all the resources they need?
So thank you for that. So I have actually noticed, I became a court attorney in the Bronx in 2017. And at the time, we didn't get a lot of self-represented litigants. Maybe you got 1 or 2. And then I became a judge in 2023, and I started to see 2, 3, 4 self-represented litigants. And now I'll have a morning calendar of like 3 or 4 self-represented litigants. And And so, to answer your question, is it's complicated. I cannot give legal advice. Ethically, I'm not permitted to give legal advice. Um, but am I going to stand there when someone gets steamrolled by a lawyer? Like, I can't do that either. So it becomes an access issue, right? We talk about language access. We have made great strides, and in large part due to Judge Zayas, and Judge Richardson, who is the Deputy Chief Administrative Judge for Justice Initiatives, who's absolutely
I was going to
wonderful
say,
too.
she's been here too.
Wonderful too. We've made great strides on this, that we do have a help center in my courthouse, and I do have little postcards, and I do tell people, go downstairs. If you are going to take this case, a lot of times people, they come to court because something bad is happening and they don't know what else to do. They file papers because I've just get so many different examples. People file a lawsuit because their car was repossessed. Well, they took my car, but I don't owe them the money. That's a really hard thing to prosecute yourself, getting your car back. And I can't tell you how to do it, but I can tell you the steps in general. So really, it's a resources issue, and we're getting much better at it. That we do have the help center, we do have online DIY forms and things of this nature. So the best I can do when someone's unrepresented and they come before me is patience, understanding, right? Some people just want to be heard. Some people come and they've just been so aggrieved and they're just so upset, and they're in court because something happened. And it's like, well, why don't you come up here, come up to the bench, and I'll shake their hand. And why don't you tell me what's going on? What's going on that's upsetting you? And then when they walk through it, sometimes if there's absolutely nothing that can be done, I'll tell them that. I go, I'm really sorry this happened to you. But we can't sue for everything. Not everything is legally compensable. But it's an access issue that the court system, are on top of. Much better.
That was such a great question. Seriously, impressive. See, our students are still as good as you. Are there other questions? Because I've got.
Don't be
some.
shy.
Did you have one? Yes. Oh, okay. I see a hand up back here in the middle, Mindy. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Elmer Navarro, and I just wanted to ask, what is it something that when lawyers go into your courtroom, what is something that really that you don't like that lawyers do, but they still do in your courtroom?
Oh, that's very interesting. So I don't. What is my biggest pet? I'm interpreting the question.
Yeah,
What is my biggest pet peeve? Lawyers who aren't on time. Lawyers who aren't on time. If I say, I don't know how it works in everybody else's courtroom, but if I say 10 a.m. at 10:15, I'm looking at my watch, and you're going to be a little in trouble, especially if everybody else managed to make it there successfully. Why are we waiting for you? So tardiness, and just that's a professional courtesy too. So that's a big one for me. So now I'm just going to sound off on things that lawyers do that bother me. The other thing that lawyers do, everything's adversarial. And that's not a bad thing, right? The adversarial process works if we work it, right? Everybody is entitled to a diligent representation. But sometimes they just don't talk to each other, like, at all. And then they get up and they're bickering, and I'm sitting there going, what'd you just say? But did you hear what she said? You agree. Why are you up here bickering in front of me when you actually agree? When was the last time you guys spoke? You didn't speak until you came up here, right? So they don't talk to each other, which is really a peeve of mine. They can work out a lot of things without my intervention, but I'm happy to intervene when I have to.
So, do we have another question? I forgot my job. I'm supposed to ask. I was ready to follow up with another question. It's like, whoop, not my job. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Janet.
Hi.
My question was more like on your journey to law school, like focusing on the LSAT. If you took a gap year, how that journey was, because I know we have to conquer our fears, and that's one of my fears. So I just want to know more about that process.
Okay.
Thank you for making him tell a story.
Yes, here we go with the storytelling. I'll be honest with you, the LSAT was the hardest thing I've ever done in my entire life. It really was. It was harder than the bar exam. It stands out as one of my greatest accomplishments was getting through that damn test. So I realized when I was in John Jay that I wanted to be a lawyer, and I knew I had to get past this LSAT. So, all right, I was waiting tables, I was bartending, I had any number of restaurant jobs while I was going to school. And I was working on 86th Street in the city, and there was a Barnes & Noble, and I said, all right, I took my tip money, I went to Barnes & Noble, and I got a practice book. I opened it up, and I was like, what the hell is this? Right? It's changed, but back then it had like logic games, which is really just like, what? Yeah, I was like, what is this, right? So, but I was like, okay. So I signed up, and I went and I took the test. I don't recommend just taking the test without proper studying, but I was like, I'm a smart guy, I got this. I showed up, and I bombed it. I really did. I bombed it. It was embarrassing. And I was like, okay, I'll study next time around. I'll study. Okay, so then I got more practice books. I took more practice exams. And by the way, if you're scared of the test, that's my only advice for you is desensitization, right? If you said you were scared of spiders, if you said you had arachnophobia and you were scared of spiders, a therapist would put a damn spider next to you to help you get over it.
No. This is one example I don't agree with. I have fear of bugs. Don't bring one to me.
So, but my point is
I
just
got it.
if you're scared of that exam, you got to take a practice test. They're available online now too. I'm old. I didn't have that luxury. I ain't put the test on.
Well, okay.
They gave
Clearly, we
sample
didn't have the Free
questions,
Law
but they-
Institute. Now we do have that now. So
Yes.
I recommend that all of you, if you're not already engaged, go see Elizabeth Broccoli and sign up with the Free Law Institute.
Yes. See, wonderful. So make sure you do that. But so, all right. So I took the test once. I bombed it. I signed up to take it again, and this time I studied, and I really studied. I was locked in. I was taking. I had bought earplugs because my parents were loud and obnoxious, and I locked myself in the room. And I remember studying for this damn thing, and our electricity got turned off. So now I'm studying in the dark, and and so the sun goes down, and now I'm studying by candlelight. I'm not kidding. I'm studying for the LSAT by candlelight. But I'm like, okay, so I'm bubbling, my little answers, and all right, we'll see how this goes. So I show up the second time, I take the damn test, and I bombed it again. And so here's the problem. That time I studied. So now the dream is in jeopardy. Like, like what the hell am I gonna do? And so I wish I could say why. I wish I knew what the secret sauce was. I wish I knew what the formula was, but I just refused to be disheartened. So I was, okay, I'm gonna take the damn test again. I'm gonna take it again. I was like, but this time it might be more prudent to have more of a study aid and stop studying by candlelight. And so I looked into different prep courses, different third-party prep courses, and I settled on Kaplan, and it was called LSAT Boot Camp, and they weren't kidding. It was boot camp, and I think the class was something like $6,100 or something like that, or $5,500. Not important, but what was important was I didn't have that. I was broke. So how is this going to work? So then I looked into personal loans. And fortunately, I don't know how I had the foresight to have good credit, but I had good credit. So I borrowed $5,000 at like 22% interest, 23% interest, something outrageous.
Criminal.
It's something outrageous. And I said, all right. So then they cut me my little $5,000 check, and I gave all that money to Kaplan, and I went to boot camp. And I was it was hard. It was really, really hard. And they had all these strategies. I employed all the strategies. I bought a stopwatch. All day Saturday, I sat for a full-length test. All day Sunday, I sat for a full-length test. Every single weekend, just grinding away. At the time, I was still working, too. I was still waiting tables. So this was a before work, after work thing. They offered everything that they offered, I did. It was like, oh, you don't have to take the practice tests on the weekend. I took the practice tests on the weekend, right? So I didn't mention this. The second time that I took the test, I had applied to CUNY Law School. Okay, so I had applied to CUNY Law School. I didn't hear nothing. I wonder why. So I hadn't heard anything. So I sat down and I took the test for the third time, and I left feeling like, what it is, what it is. It just is. It's going to be whatever it is. And at the time, I wasn't really gearing to. I wasn't trying to fall back on anything. I was like, this is what I'm going to do, and I can't believe that. I can't believe that this standardized test could tell me that I can't. And so I was working, I was waiting tables, and I got an email from someone at CUNY Law, and it's I'll never forget it. It was the subject was opportunity for admission. And I opened the email, and the email explains that CUNY Law has a pipeline program. And the pipeline program is two parts. The first part is test prep. because if you can score 151 on the LSAT, if you can score 151 on an LSAT, the science there shows that you could be successful in law school. So that's the first part. You score 151 on the LSAT. The second part is they'll give you a pre-law class that will explain to you the rigors of being a first-year law student. And so the pipeline program was in only its second year at that time. The pipeline program had figured out that this was kind of the 1-2 punch for success in law school. If we could help you get a certain grade on the LSAT, particularly something over 150, and we give you that class, you can be successful in law school. And so I was like, yeah, I'll do it. I'll do it. Wholeheartedly, both feet, I'll do it. But then I reached out and I said, hey, I just took the LSAT though. And they said, oh, okay. So when you get your results, if you score over 150, let us know and you won't have to do the first part of the program. We'll welcome you to the second part of the program. And I was like, okay. So the problem was I had never scored 150 on a practice exam. The first time I took the test, I got like a 139, which is absolutely outrageous. The second time I took the test, a little better, 144. But my practice tests were like 147, 147, 146, 146, 147. And I was like, oh, man. But we'll see, right? We'll see. I could always take it a fourth time, I guess. And so I'll never forget. I'll try not to I get emotional when I tell this story. I'll never forget. So I went to the movies. I was out on a date, and and I had a BlackBerry at the time. So my BlackBerry goes off. And it's the Law School Admission Council, LSAC. They're the ones that give you your grade. So I was watching. It was a Batman movie. It was The Dark Knight. So I was watching The Dark Knight, and so I got my little BlackBerry, and I sat there frozen because I didn't want to open that email. And so I sat there, and I got very, very religious in that movie theater. I started making all these promises. To God. I was like, man, I will do the best I can do with a law degree. I will be a legal aid lawyer. I will help people. I will dedicate my life to helping people. But please, I can't take that test again. I'm sorry. And so I opened the email, and wouldn't you know it, I scored exactly 151. Woo! 151. Woo! And so, I mean, aside from crying during a superhero movie, people must have thought I was crazy. And the funny, I still have the screenshot of this email. I still have this email. I had Gmail when it first existed. So
He's not 40 yet, people. So don't
it's coming. I only got a few days.
He's acting like he's an old man. Let's put it in perspective.
So I reach out to CUNY and I say, hey, I forward them the email. I say, hey, I say, oh, that's wonderful. Congratulations. You made it to the second part of the program. We'll see you in the spring. And I was just like, wow. And nothing's ever been the same since.
There are many things I love about this story, but I love hearing you talk about all the promises you made and how religious you got. But what's most important is you kept those promises.
I did. I absolutely did.
You kept those promises, and your presence today here is now I'm going to get teary. Yeah. Another one of those examples of keeping that promise. So are there other questions before we both pull out our tissues?
Hello, my name's Elias.
We got you.
Yeah,
Hello, my name's Elias Aker. I want to ask, do you find yourself struggling to get your mind off court? You mentioned before that you were thinking of cases over the dinner table. So I wonder how a career like this can affect your personal life inside and outside of court.
So this is where I'm supposed to tell you that you got to compartmentalize and don't bring your work home with you. I'm thinking, I got assigned to trial yesterday. I'm thinking about it right now. It's like, and look, and this is the truth. It's cliche how many times people say it, but if you love what you do, it doesn't feel like work. And I love what I do. So when I leave here, I'm probably going to conference with the lawyers on my trial and say, what did we say we were going to start jury selection? Well, why don't we move it up and this and that? I went to the courthouse today. I was just going to come straight here. I went to the courthouse this morning and I conferenced that case. And they were like, and I said, well, you could stay here. I got somewhere to be, but you guys could stay here and we keep working on this. There's a line, there's a balance that we all have to find, right? I have a beautiful wife. I have a 9-year-old daughter. I have a 1-year-old son. And at any given time, we're all juggling balls up into the air, right? And I read somewhere, someone said, and I can't steal this, but can't give credit either. I don't know who said this. At any given moment, you're juggling all these balls. All of them are made out of rubber, except the family one. That one's made out of glass. Okay. And I think the same person said something like, how do you spell love? Time, right? So balance is super, super important. I have a to-do list as long as a CVS receipt. Like, I got a million things. When I leave here, I wish the car drove itself because I got a million things to do. But you can't make yourself crazy. It's all about triage. It's all about priority. What can you do? What can you put off without procrastinating? Don't procrastinate, but what needs your attention right now? What needs my attention right now? You all need my attention right now. That's it. So I'm here. My phone is on silent. You all need my attention right now. That's where I am.
This is such a gift. Thank you. Really, thank you. Do we have other questions? I see one right here in the second row, next to Steve.
Yes. Hi, my name is
Hi.
Elizabeth, and I just wanted to say that first, it's just very inspiring to just see that you like came out from like a very like not too present family. So my question is kind of centered around that. It's kind of personal. I hope you don't mind.
No, I don't mind, please.
Okay. So I said, like, what was it like growing up with like absent parents, and how has that shaped you, especially like as a parent now?
See, thank you for that. That is, interestingly, I don't harbor any resentment towards my parents. A lot of people say, I lost my father in 2017. My mother's still alive. Me and my mother still talk. My mother and I talk on a cell phone that I pay for, I just don't harbor any resentment. They were stuck in what they were stuck in. And I realized at a young age that had nothing to do with me, but I don't got to be stuck here with you. I don't have to do this. I don't want this. I'm not going to do this with you. So really, it just speaks to you're kind of in it on your own, whatever you're trying to do, you got to be in it with both feet. And it's great to pick up mentors along the way and to pick up advice along the way. But at the end of the day, it's you, dreams come true. They don't come free. So, it's, I feel like that wasn't responsive.
No, I'm writing that down. I like that. Dreams come.
I hope that answers your question.
So, wait, do we have another? Oh, there's a hand over there. I see you.
I just want to say, I don't know if y'all got class or anything, but I got all day to do this.
I'm loving this wisdom. We're recording this, right? So I can watch it again later? Okay, good. Thank you, Thomas.
Um,
Hi.
Hi, my name's Catherine. So going off of your childhood, and I just want to say congratulations on
Thank you.
all you've accomplished, even considering your background. To some of us who may have less similar background to you, was there any time, like, throughout your, like, career and your education that you sometimes thought, I wish you were here for me more, to your parents, or, like, you kind of felt like you needed more support and you didn't have it?
Yeah. Probably the whole damn time.
How did you navigate through that?
Again, I made a decision. I was very young. Wait, it's story time again. So
Good.
it was so
Like that.
So I'll tell you, I was about how old was I? I was about 13 years old, and we didn't have any electricity because the Con Ed loves to turn your lights off when you don't pay. So I didn't have any electricity, and I am a huge Yankee fan. Okay, so thank you. So like I'll play for them. I'm a huge Yankee fan. So I had watched the Yankees win in 96. We lost in 97. We didn't go anywhere in 97. 98, we were a hell of a season in 1998. Back before some of y'all were born. I'm going to keep throwing those out there.
Okay.
And so in 98, I was listening to the World Series on a radio. Okay? Y'all know what a radio is? I was listening to the World Series on a radio, and it was a little radio, little one-speaker radio. It had like neon
They
colors.
used to call transistor
I'm
radios?
telling you. And so that radio was powered by like one AA battery. And so I was sitting in the dark with my father, and we were listening to John Sterling call the Yankee game. And that damn battery died. Yeah, right? I mean, and I'll tell you, you have to laugh because it's almost silly, right? But that was it. I was like, I am done with this. I'm done with you all. These were the choices you all made. I don't have to be like this. I'm going to go to school. I'm going to get the hell out of here. And that was it. And I just became laser focused on that. And after that, you talk about not being present. I think about my children, right? My daughter had to go to school this morning. I went in, all right, honey, it's time to get up, picked out all her clothes. 15 minutes later, I said it's time to get up, right? 20 minutes later, I said it's time to get up. Finally comes downstairs, I comb her hair. What do you want for breakfast? Nobody did any of that for me. I set the alarm, I got dressed, I took myself to school. If I didn't feel like going, nobody asked why I didn't go to school that day. Maybe a social worker might reach out, but my parents didn't ask if I stayed home that day or why I stayed home that day. So yeah, do I wish they were present? I do. All I could do is be a different kind of parent. I could just, treat my kids differently. It's the best I can do.
What I love about these questions and the answers, and what I want to make sure that you all know, is that we are here for you. And he's talked about mentors can't do everything, but you still have to be self-directed yourself as well. But you're going to have days when you need more than just you. And that's what we're here to do for you here at John Jay. And if you don't know where to go for help, just stop anybody, because somebody will get you to where you need to go. Now, I always tell people the easy thing is go to the Wellness Center first, because they know where all the resources are. Wellness Center, J Express, we don't make people run around like we used to. We learn. I mean, seriously, we learn from hearing your stories and hearing things about how things were for you and try to make it better. And so I am glad you're telling people how it used to be. So, because they're not happy with everything the way it works now, but they're like, oh, okay. Back in the dark days, the dark ages, it was harder. But we're here for you. And his presence here shows you how important you all are. Because like he said, he shut off his phone, not dealing with his cases, because we are invested in your success so that you can be the next Judge Fernandez. You can be the next Kimura. You can be the next person who finds the cure for cancer. I mean, these are things that they say they're moonshots, but they're not, because you all have these answers and you all are the ones who are going to make these miracles happen. So.
Yeah. And if I could just quickly piggyback off of that, it's certainly not easy to sit in front of all of y'all, just tell you how miserable my childhood was, and I had made the decision to be so public about it very recently. When the governor nominated me for a judgeship, I had to be confirmed by the Senate, and to get to Senate confirmation, you have to go through the Senate's Judiciary Committee. And so I remember the night before, after she announced my candidacy, I started to prepare remarks, because they ask you to give like an opening statement to the Judiciary Committee. And I thought, what am I going to say? And as I sat there, I started jotting notes, and I started crying hysterically, right? Because I started saying I was the kid from Spanish Harlem with the drug-addicted parents. I was the kid who went to, who came up in the shelter system. I was the kid. I woke up every single day. I set my own damn alarms, right? And I was crying because I was like, am I really going to say this? Like, am I really going to say this out loud? Like, this is private, right? Why am I sharing this, And I played with several drafts of it. And then I decided, like, yeah, I am going to say it, because if for some reason this doesn't work out, I told my truth. So I will tell them. And so I appeared in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee. I told them. And that's public, by the way. If you can actually Google my name and the Senate Judiciary Committee, and you can hear exactly what I told them. And I gave that was my testimony. I kept telling myself, this is your testimony. What are you going to tell them? And I wanted something that my kids would listen to one day. But here's the other interesting thing. So after I had done that, I really felt like a weight had been lifted. This was this interesting feeling. I had been burdened by this for some reason. And I was like, wow, that's interesting. And then, so I became a judge, and I was assigned to Bronx Supreme Court, where I had been a court attorney for so long. All these people know me. And then I was being honored at a Hispanic Heritage Month program. They wanted to do lunch with a judge, and they wanted to honor me at lunch with a judge. And they asked me my story. And I said, you know what? You asked my story, I'm going to give you my story. So I gave more of that. And so what ends up happening after I do these things, after I did it once, twice, is I end up getting messages from people, you know, and people share their stories with me. And people say things like, you know, and people are unburdening themselves, you know? And so I was talking to my wife about this the other day. I said, you know, it almost feels like a moral failing for me not to share this story now when I know it impacts people the way that it does. And it's not for me to explain why it's impactful. I'm glad if you find it inspiring, but I can't not tell it anymore. Now I have to spread it like the gospel, because the outpouring of support, it's not just the support for me. People are very kind. Oh, we're so proud of you. I never knew this about you. Well, I don't go around wearing a sign that says I was homeless. But really just the personal stories that have landed in my inbox, you know, and I'll share, you know, I shouldn't be publicly accessible. The judicial security people don't like that. But if you Google me, you will find my LinkedIn. And I invite all of you to connect with me on LinkedIn. And if you have a story you want to tell me, safe space, I won't share it with anyone. Okay? The stories come from everywhere. Do you know, and I won't reveal who, but after an article came out about me, about how I struggled with homelessness, I got an email from not one, but 2 Supreme Court justices in New York City that said, I too was homeless and I too found success at CUNY.
Yeah, wow.
I'm not the only one. Can you imagine? And I just...
Yeah. So thank you for being vulnerable. Thank you for being real. Thank you for being candid with us, because we all need to hear this, because everybody needs to know what's possible. And on multiple levels, the fact that you decided that you, at 10 years out, you were going to be a judge and made it happen. And on top of that, how far you came to do that, it's not just inspiring. It tells us what's possible and tells us why hearing it is important. Because how many of you all now have a different attitude about what you can do and what you can be because you sat here today? I was going to say, I'm raising my hand. So thank you, because, you know, this is our future. Even though you think you're old, you're my future. And this is what we need right now. We need people like you, fearless, telling your stories so that we can go out and conquer the world. And so I know we are right at time. So I just want to say thank you to the audience as well, because you all showed up in great numbers to show him how important his story and his presence is to us. So I'm thanking you all first. Thank you very much. And now let's thank our fabulous, distinguished alumnus for coming back to share with us today.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.